Welcome to Wire Guild. The tutorial I'm going to do is the Paradigm Bangle, and it has been an absolute favourite of mine for years, and it always turns out lovely, and you can swap the stones around and get different looks. It's a nice one. Now, materials you may use different to me because of sizes, etc., but I used 8 lengths of 21 gauge dead soft wire, 4 gold and 4 silver ones. I used 4 lengths of 21 gauge dead soft wire, again 3 gold fill and 1 silver, 4.5 inch of 18 gauge or 1mm round wire, some 18 gauge half round binding wire, and a 25 by 18mm lapis lazuli cabochon. Now these are my 8 wires that I'm using for the bracelet. I've got 4 silver ones and I've got 4 gold ones. I like the 2 colours mixed together. I really think it makes for a different strap. I'm going to twist 2 of my wires. I've got a pin vise here and I'm just opening up the end of it, and I'm just going to pop in just the end of the wire. The more you put in, the more it doesn't twist. Obviously it doesn't twist the bit that's inside, so you just want a little bit in there, and then tighten that as far as it'll go so that it doesn't move, so it's nice and firm in there. And then using a pair of pliers, put the pliers on the other end of the wire. I'm just about at the limit of my shot here, but there, I think you can see both there, and just twist. Now I'm holding the wire under tension and twisting at the same time. It's a little bit of a knack, but it gives you a nice sort of consistent twist across the wires. So it's really like my index finger and my thumb that are doing the twisting, and my little finger and my ring finger are holding it tight. So I'm going to do another one. These are both gold ones that I'm twisting, and I'm only going to twist 2. Making a bracelet strap with square wire is one thing because it sits next to each other and it's relatively flat. If you twist your wires, they become round wires. So if you twist every single one of these, you're going to give yourself a nightmare headache trying to bind it together because it's every wire is trying to move. So that's my second one twisted. Let's just undo that and pop that one down. Now, like I said, with the gold and silver, it's quite nice, and it's amazing how many different looks you can get by just rearranging these wires ever so slightly differently. So it's really good to play about with what you've got. I mean, you may just want gold on one side and silver on the other, so you get this really sort of strong two-tone effect. Or like me, I'm mixing them up. I put 2 silver ones in the middle. Well, I will when they stop rearranging themselves. And then either side of those I'm going to put the 2 twisted gold ones, like that. And then I've got the plain gold one. Yeah, I want the plain gold one next to the twisted one. So 2 silver in the middle, twisted gold, and then gold either side. And it's really effective. I like it. And for selling it's also good because if people don't know who they're buying for. Now, we want this to be nice and flat because when I bind around it, we're aiming for a nice flat strap. So can you see that? Just 1 wire thick. I don't want the wires on top of each other or bunching up. Nice and flat. So there we go. So I'm going to get the stone. This is the piece of lapis that I've got that I'm going to use in the middle. You may have a larger one or a smaller one. I've got another one here which is a bit bigger, which would probably go in quite well, and this is a piece of it's a druzzy agate, but I'm going to use the lapis. I like the dark blue lapis. It's nice. You have to work out what size opening you want in the middle. At a rough guess, it's usually between 2 and 2.5 inches, depending on the size of the bracelet that you're making. So I've got 7.5 inches of wire, give or take. I've got a little bit over because some of them are uneven. And I've placed my bracelet in the middle, and if I do that, that's a nice size for it to sit in. Sort of one side or the other, you want it in the middle. So I've got about 2.5 inches there that need to be in the middle. Now, with a 7.5 inch length, which is what I've got on the wires, I will end up with a 7.5 inch bracelet. I've got 2.5 inches that I want for my opening in the middle. Now if you were making a smaller bracelet, say a 5 inch bracelet, I wouldn't suggest using 2.5 inch because it's half your length. I'd use much less. So let me just draw this on my piece of paper so I know where I am. I've got 7.5 inches from top to bottom. My central point of 7.5 inches would be 3.25. So let me just mark the 3.25 point. Sorry, 3 3/4. I can't add up. There we go. Now I have to allow for my 2.5 inches in the middle, so I need 1.25 either side. So I'm going to the 5 inch point and then 1.25 the other way to there. So I've got the end of my wires, my central point, and then my 2 points either side, which are going to show me where my bindings need to go. So I'm just going to gather all my wires up again, get them back into my hand. If you find it easier, you can always wrap some masking tape around these wires to keep them still. I never bother. I much prefer to do it with just my fingers, then I don't have to clear off any sticky residue from the tape. And I'm just going to give the wires a little rub with an extremely dirty silver cloth. I've had it ages. Rubbing them it's not really for cleaning them, it's more, it's almost sort of shoving them or pushing them where they want to be in a nice sort of straight flat line. Now I've got my 18 gauge half round binding wire. Just get my pliers. I'm going to put a really nice sharp bend on that, and I've got probably about 1 inch on the end. I find it's easier to make sure that I've got enough room to actually wrap this round. So laying my pliers on, I want to go to one of my points there. That's one of my binding points, and let's just get my half round wire on. That's it, hold it still, wrap it all the way around, press it down with pliers. Now if you're having trouble with binding, there is a video in the skill set section that sort of deals more with getting your bindings on, how to get them flat, how to get them neat, and how to make sure that your wires don't lift up and cross. So it might be worth having a quick look at that again if you're having trouble with them. How many times to go around? I always suggest that you go around more than twice so that it's nice and firm. I'm going to go around probably 4 times with this one. I'm just going to cut some of this length off because it's hitting the camera every time I take it round. So let me just get rid of some of this. Now if your first one's a little loose, just pull it back and then pull it tight again. And what it will do is it will just tighten up on any looseness that you got with your first wrap round. There we go. When you trim off whichever you decide is going to be the back, try and trim less than half the distance across the strap. That way when you press it down it will stay down. It's got less ability to lift if it's that little bit shorter. I'm just pressing that down with my pliers, and we'll trim the other one off. All these little bits just get popped straight into my scrap pots because these are all bits of silver, but if you've managed to source yourself some plate or something like that, you could use that, or even using copper, you could do this with copper. So just line this back up again, and that's where one of my bindings is, and the other one goes there. Make sure that I haven't crossed any wires by running my fingernail down it, making sure that those wires are flat in between, and that's where my other binder is going to go. So another nice sharp bend, making sure that the flat side of the metal is going on the inside of your binding, if you like, and the domed side is the outer bit that you're looking at. Now I need to make sure that I get the same amount of wraps here as I did in the first one, or it's going to look a little bit odd. Tighten that one back up because that was my first one. and wrap around. Can you see how the wires staying perfectly flat? We don't want to bunch these up so that the wires cross over one another. We just want nice, flat, smooth metal that have all been bound together. Let me just move that out of the way. Press it down. Lovely. And we'll just trim that off. Make sure that you trim off always on the same side. You don't want to end up with one that's trimmed and the other isn't. So now I need to make it into an opening. It needs to be an aperture that is going to take the stone that we want to put in. So you can see my bindings are neatly on the point. I've got a little bit too much wire. Can you see just there? But I'll trim that off when we get to the end, so don't worry about that. Little bit too much is never a problem. It's when it's too little that it's, you know. With my fingers, I'm just splitting the wire and just gently easing them apart. Just with my thumb. If you try and use your pliers, you'll get a very sharp point, whereas just using my fingers like this, you get a nice soft line. There we go. Let's see if we're open enough. The stone that we're going to pop in should just sit inside. There we go, like that. Lovely. Now we can put that on one side for now, and we can think about putting the wires around the stone that's going to hold the stone in place. For this I've got 3 gold fill wires and I have 1 silver wire, and they're all about 11 inches long. The silver one I'm going to twist. So back into my pin vise. Whoops. Just untwist that end so I can get my wire in. There we go. And just tighten that up. This is a longer length of wire than we did with the bracelet, so obviously I would need to do much more than sort of 21 twists if I want a similar twist. So I'm going to grip the end and I'm going to bring it back into shot for you. And you can see my finger and my thumb are doing the twisting, but my little finger and against my hand is what's actually holding the tension on the wire to get it twisted. When I've decided that I've got enough twists on there, it takes a lot more doing. There we go. I just want to show you what it actually does to, particularly to silver wire. If I take my delightfully clean cloth and just go down, you can see how dirty that is now. So particularly after twisting silver, I always like to give it a bit of a rub. So let's just undo that and let it off. Now I've got 3 wires for the top. If I was using a smaller stone, I'd probably only use 2 here. Or if I was using a bigger one, I could probably get away with 4. But I'm going to use 3. So I've got them nice and flat. And I'm going to take my single silver wire and I'm going to put a bend right in the middle. Or near enough in the middle anyway. Doesn't really matter. And I'm wrapping this around the 3 gold wires, also in the middle. And then I'm going to press that down with my pliers. Let's just flip it over. And what I've created is an X, if you like, a cross shape. There we are, you see. And then I'm going to put my cabochon on the top. And then holding the wires firmly, take the 3 wires that are here and just straight over the top of the cabochon. You see the silver wire? Just push that down. And I've tucked those wires at the back. Okay, exactly the same now. Take the 3 wires straight across the bottom of the stone. Bend them round the back, bend the silver wire up. The silver wire is stopping the 3 wires dropping off the top and the bottom. So it's there as like an extra lock in place. Now to make it look a little bit fancier, I'm going to put my finger on the silver wire against the stone and start a twist. So it's just curling, and then go around again. So we have a double curl, and then using the very end of the wire, just curl up. So you get a nice smooth curve. You get that by using the end of the wire. Okay, now do the same again. So finger against the silver wire, twist round, back on, twist round. So I'm using the stone as like a backrest, and then curve the silver wire. Okay, now the 3 wires. I'm going to curl this into this gap here at the top. So I take the wires, wrap them around, press down onto the stone, and then allow it to move up. And I'm going to take those down the side to meet the silver wire. Okay, do it again. So 3 wires, fingers on all 3 so they stay flat. Press it down onto the stone as you go around, and then all the way down the side of the stone, making sure those wires stay straight. Lovely. So just give those a bit of a rearrange, because I want the wires to meet. I want the single silver wire, but as you can see it's quite firm. It's really not going to drop out at the moment, but I need some more of the binding wire. I'm just going to pop a bend in that, and you'll see why in a second. I want the central point of the stone, so at about there I want to bend the 3 wires, and I'm going to bend the end of the wire outwards there. This means I can bring the silver wire to it, make sure they're flat. There we go. The silver wire can come up and meet it. Now let's just bend that the other way, and then I can use my binding wire and go over all 4 of the wires. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to wrap that round. Now I'm just going to go around twice because we don't really have a lot of room here, so twice will be enough to hold it firm. So I'm just going to wrap that around nice and tight, but keeping the wires flat. Trim them off and press the end down. Okay, let's just trim that one shorter and press it down. Now I'm going to take 2 of the gold wires and move them straight upwards, and then 1 gold and 1 silver, and move that downwards. So I now have 2 wires going up and 2 wires coming down, and we will use those to fasten this piece onto the bracelet strap. So let's do the other side. Exactly the same. I'm making sure those 3 wires are nice and flat. Central point there, that's it. Pliers on the side of the wires, bend outwards. Silver wire coming up to it, and where it meets, bend it. Put the pliers over the top to make sure that the 4 wires are laying flat. We don't want a little clump bunched up, we want 4 straight wires. Bit of binding wire, let's just trim some of that off so I don't hit the camera with it. Put a bend in, and I'm just going to wrap round twice, just like I did on the other side. So press that down and go round again. Let's have a look at the back. There we go. Now just trim off nice and short. Please make sure when you're trimming off you don't cut through any wires that you're not meant to cut through. It's always so heartbreaking when you get the wrong wire when you're meant to be cutting the right one. And then just trim the other side. That's it. And press that down with your pliers. Okay, I'm going to split the wires now. So I'm just going to pop those in my silver pot. Hang on a minute, get those out of the way. I'm going to split the wires in the same way. So 2 gold ones going up, and then 1 gold and a silver one coming down. Lovely. So we've got our central piece here now, and all it's waiting for really is to be added to the bracelet strap. So back to our bracelet. Now mine fits on perfectly. If you need a little bit more adjusting, you can move your aperture so that it's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, but this is just about right. Now I'm holding it all firm, so the stone's in place, my thumb's over the top. I'm making sure that everything's not going anywhere, and I'm just going to wrap these wires around. I'm just going to trim some of this length off because there's a little bit much there. Using my pliers, curl round from the end and then just feed them through that opening. Press that down. If it's easier, do it 1 wire at a time. Bring the wires up and go around. You're going to be able to see this going round sort of as if you've got 4 wires on the top. So we've gone all the way round and then round again, and I'm going to do opposite side now. Slightly less wire, but there's still plenty of wire to actually put round and through the gap in the middle. Press down, and then if it's easier, 1 wire at a time. Make sure they lay neat. This is the top and the front of our bracelet. It's the bit that everybody's going to look at, so really we want this nice and neat. There we go. So we've got sort of either sides in, so I can just trim these off nice and short, trim them down, and then press them down to the back of the framework, making sure that our 4 wires that we've wrapped around are still staying as 4 side by side wires, that they aren't clumping up or bunching or anything. Nice and smooth, no sharp bits. That's what we want. Nothing worse than wearing something that's got a sharp bit on. So let's just trim those and press those little ends down. There we go. Nice and neat. No sharp bits. So just do the same now with the remaining 2 pairs of wires. So I'll just take a little bit of that off, it's a bit long. And just curl those in. Pull them through. Remember, we're not bunching these wires up. We're just pulling through and then more laying them over the wires rather than pulling them tight. And then down, around the back, trim and press down. There we go. Now you can use this with any stone. The only thing I would suggest that you don't use is a circular one, because when you try and do that wrap around the top and the one around the bottom of the actual stone, it's extremely difficult on a circular stone because there's nothing really for it to sit against, and it slithers off. But you can use squares or oblong stones and then put them in diagonally, so it's like a diamond shape. They look really, really lovely. Or an oval. When you've had a little bit of practice doing it, you can do this with gemstones. As long as they don't have too deep a back, you can go over a faceted stone. I put some extra photos at the very, very end of the film, so you can see the different ones that I've done in the same way. So just trim that off and press it down. Okay, no sharpies, lovely. So now I need to do the ends, of the bracelet. That's nice and firm. It's not going to go anywhere. So if I go back onto my original marks, I've lost a little tiny bit of length because of course we opened the aperture up, so you lose a little bit. And I'm just going to even these wires up because I've got one or two that are not quite sort of straight. So I'm straightening the wires between my fingers so they're a flat length, and then just using my pliers I am trimming off the smallest amount from the end just to even them up, and they can go in the scrap pot. And then I'm going to use the binding wire again. I think overall I probably used maybe 18 inches of binding wire, but it will always depend on how much you use, how many wraps you put on and things like that. So even the ends out, and I'm going to start binding and going round. Now I want to leave a certain amount of wire at the end because I'm going to use that to create the clasp. You need to have at the end about 1/4 of an inch or a little tad over 1/4 of an inch. I'll show you on the ruler exactly how much that is in a second. It means I'm going to have quite a lot of wraps around here because I'm quite a way off 1/4 of an inch there, but I quite like having a substantial amount of wraps on the back. It gives it a certain sort of strength, if you know what I mean, on the back of that. So I think we'll get in there. So I'm going to trim that end off there and just press that end down, and this one can just be trimmed nice and short and press down as well. Right, so if I get this onto the ruler, you can see that it's just over 1/4 of an inch, sort of, I don't know what they are they like 30 seconds or something that are over. If I did it in mil, it would be 7 or 8 millimeters, but that's about the right length. So I'm going to do the other end now. The other end, as you can see, is all over the place, higgledy-piggledy, because I had that too much wire. Do you remember when we measured it up? I had too much, so I'm just going to trim all of that off. Now what I did there was I put the snips over the top and squeezed gently, and it gives you a nice straight line going all the way across. Then you can cut the wires sort of 1 or 2 at a time, following that line that you sort of pressed into the wire by going across in one go. But I don't cut sort of all 8 in one go, it's not good for your pliers. So my binding wire again, now another sharp bending, making sure that the flat side's on the inside. How many have I got here? I've got 8, so I need to put 8 on the other side. Now I always have a problem with this. I don't know whether it's to do with being right-handed, but I can only do my bindings, I don't know if you've noticed, from left to right. I've watched the people that have come and done classes and they have absolutely no trouble binding from right to left or left to right, but me, I can only do it from left to right. So sometimes judging exactly what distance I need to be starting can be a little bit difficult. So kind of got a good idea and I've started wrapping here, but once I get to 8 I will know whether I'm in the right spot or not. So we just go around and pressing down. Now that's my 8, and as you can see that's nearly at a centimetre, so I could do with another wrap around, but that would give me 9 rather than the 8 to match the other side. So let's just trim that off and press it down. And then by having a reasonably long tail, say if I'd have been short and I only had 7, I could have gone around at the other end, at this end. So I need it to match, so I'm going to undo one of them. There we go. Now we've got 8. Just trim that, pliers right way around, just trim that one off and press it down. I would always rather work with a little bit too much wire and then cut it off than end up with too little and the bracelet not looking good. You end up wasting more in the long run. So that's the bracelet virtually done. We need to sort out these ends and put our clasp on. So I'm just separating them one wire at a time, just outwards. I aren't going for these being flat or anything. All I'm aiming for is a very, very slight V shape, and I'm making sure that all the wires stay together nice and flat. They're not all runkled up or anything like that. They're just 2 sets of 4 wire on both ends. When we put the catch on, we have 2 loops. If you don't do this split in the wire, there is no room in the middle for the loops that we created on the catches to go, which is why we put this little V in the end. Just making sure that they're all together. There we are, and same on the other side. Not splayed out like open fingers, but just 2 rows of 4 wires. So not huge, just a little V, just with a little separation at the end. Okay, now taking flat pliers, I'm going to go right over the top, gripping both of them. I'm at the top of the piece. You can see the top's facing me, so I've got the stone upwards, and I'm going to take these now and I'm going to bend them up like that. Now there's a reason for this. If you have a piece of wire like this, and you put your round nose pliers on and then curl the wire around in a circle around your pliers, you end up with a circle that is wholly at the bottom of the wire. So if that was a bracelet, that whole lump would stick into your wrist. If you bend the wires up first and then put your pliers on the end, when you curl round, you get a curl that's sort of half above and half below the centre of the bracelet. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for. So many people work with computers and things like that with the wrist sitting on a desk using a mouse. The last thing they want is a bracelet that digs in the wrist. So round nose pliers, and using the very tip, I've created a little hook, and I'm going to do it again on that side, just curling it in. Don't make it touch. Obviously if it touches, we can't add our clasp, our hook and eye clasp. So I need to bend these upwards. Remember, it's being bent up to the top of the piece, and then we grip with the pliers and curl around downwards, creating these little hooks. And the same with the other side. Now I've just got one wire slightly shorter there, so I'm having to grab it, but that's fine, it's done it. Lovely. So we can pop that on one side, and now it's time to make the hook and eye clasp. Now I'm using 18 gauge or 1mm silver round wire. I've got 2 pieces. One's 2 inches, which is the one I've got in my hand now, and the other's 2.5 inches. So I've got the 2-inch piece, and I've bent it around my round nose pliers until it forms a U shape. Once we get to that U shape, I can then grip the very edge of the wire with my round nose pliers. I'm about halfway up, and I'm creating a loop going outwards. This loop has to be big enough to take in the 4 wires on the bracelet, so don't do it too tiny. And the same on the other side. Sorry it went out of shot, but you can see what I'm doing. And then just put the pliers in and squeeze them together, and that is our hook. Now the 2.5 inch piece of wire is going to be our eye. Now if you need to, you can measure this and put a mark on it at the halfway point. Grip it with the pliers and bend. There we go. Once you've got it bent, put the pliers over the top and just tighten that up. They're nice and tight. Grip with the round nose pliers and create that into a hook like that. Then what we need to do is pop that hook. Now I've got a little tiny bit that's just off. It's probably only 1/2 mil, but I'm just going to even it up. So pliers back on over the top of the hook. These are flat pliers, and you can just see the end of the hook poking through, and then I can bend one wire one way and one wire the other. Can you see I've got another V shape? There we go. Then I'm going to use my round nose pliers, and I'm going to curl inwards and create a loop all the way till it touches. Now when I do the other side, they're probably going to overlap, but don't worry. Just keep twisting until it goes all the way and touches. Yeah, they're overlapping. So what we do, just going to make sure that touches, is back into the flat pliers with the hook end. Put the round nose pliers, one into one hole, one into the other, and just open them up a little bit. So one in one side, one in the other, and open the pliers. And what that will do is make those two loops sit side by side. So our hook and our eye. Now we just need to add these to the bracelet itself. So we just slide the rings onto those little hooks that we created in the end of the bracelet strap. Using snipe or chain nose pliers, go in through the hole of the actual hook that we fastened on our eye and ease the wires down. We are continuing the circle that we made with the hook. You're not smashing these down, you're making a circle of wire going over them. So just ease them down, and can you see I'm more smoothing it over, rather it's sort of a twist and smooth rather than a squidge. We don't want some squidging. Same on the other side. Hook onto your, in you go, there we go. Hook it onto the little hooks that we made, and then the same again with your pliers, in through the circle and press and smooth and ease those so they continue being little circles. It means that the cut edge is into the bracelet then. The cut edge is not against your wrist, which is what you want. Above all things, your stone can't fall out and it can't be sharp or uncomfy. So stone's nice and safe, let's make sure it's not sharp. So there we go, nice and smooth. So all we need to do now is shape it so that it's a bracelet shape. And to do that, if you have a bracelet mandrel, use a bracelet mandrel, or you could use a jam jar like I'm going to, and I'm just going to put the bracelet against the jam jar and smooth all the way around. And then when I get off, you can see it's got this nice sort of gentle curve which will take it over the top of the rest. And then using something much smaller, I've got a little reel from some fine silver wire, and I'm just going to bend the sides over there. It's a very forgiving thing, and you can adjust it with your fingers once you've done it to get it to the right point. But remember, very few wrists are actually round, most are oval. That's probably a little too oval, so just with your fingers, just ease it into a nice gentle oval shape, making sure that your clasps are in. There we go. And there we have a bracelet. Nope, can't see what I'm doing. Hang on, let me just turn my wrist over. It sits quite nicely. Very effective. Beautiful bracelet, and has been a brilliant seller for years. They look totally different. This one, as we said right at the beginning, was in lapis, I have another one here which was done in jasper. It's got a jasper stone in it. What have I done with it? Hang on a second. There we go. So you can see it looks slightly different. I've used 2 wires on the side instead of 1, and 3 over the top, but the straps are still the 8 wires. And then I've got one with a much smaller stone in, a piece turquoise, and this is all in gold fill. And you can see it's much smaller because not everybody wants a really big bracelet. And can you see how I've opened up the sides there? That's quite easy to do. Once you've got to the point where you've got your bindings on, just put a pair of pliers sort of in and then just twist, and it will take the gaps out. It'll take the wires out, producing a gap. Sorry, it won't take a gap out. You know what I mean, don't you? So whichever one you've made, whether you've made one like this or whether you do something like this, which is using a large opal, is that one, or this was using a beautiful sort of unusual cut, millennium cut I think it was called, amethyst. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I am so looking forward to watching the forum and seeing what you make. Thanks for watching. Happy wrapping.